Today, we're jumping into one of the most remarkable conservation stories of our time.
We really are.
We're focusing on Nepal and its, well, staggering success in saving the Royal Bengal Tiger. A triumph so effective, it's actually being called tiger diplomacy.
It's a fantastic term for it.
Yeah, and our sources here are just great. We're drawing heavily from a really insightful article in the Diplomat by Gobinda Prasad Pokharel.
Right. He's a conservation officer at the National Trust for Nature Conservation, so he's really on the ground there.
Exactly, a science and environment writer, too. So our mission today is to unpack this one extraordinary statistic. Back in 2010 at the St. Petersburg Global Tiger Summit, Nepal made this huge pledge.
A really ambitious one.
Almost audacious, yeah. It was called TX2, and they vowed to double their tiger population by 2022. At the time, they only had 121 Royal Bengal tigers.
And you have to remember, a lot of international conservation bodies saw that as, well, aspirational. You know, a nice target, but probably not going to happen.
Unlikely, yeah.
The pressure from poaching, habitat loss, I mean, the odds were really stacked against them.
But here's the aha moment, the detail that just makes this whole story.
It's incredible. Nepal didn't just hit the TX2 goal, which would have been about 250 tigers. When the 2022 census came out, they had blown past it. They achieved a confirmed population of 355 Royal Bengal tigers.
355, that's what, over 190% growth in just 12 years? It's almost unbelievable.
It is.
And the sources are so clear that this wasn't just luck. They frame it as a masterclass in governance, community involvement, and serious international commitment.
A perfect storm of doing everything right.
Exactly. Okay, so let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So let's start at the beginning. I mean, how did Nepal pull this off when we know that globally tiger habitats have shrunk by over 90%?
Yeah.
What was the first big decision?
Well, the foundation was simple in theory, but very hard in practice. They elevated tiger conservation to an absolute national priority.
Well, so it wasn't just some environmental issue on the side.
No. It became a core government mandate, and they proved that by establishing the National Tiger Conservation Committee.
Okay.
And what's fascinating is this wasn't some, dusty committee tucked away in a ministry. It was chaired by the Prime Minister himself.
The Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister. That sends a signal to every single government department, every citizen, that this commitment comes from the absolute top.
That kind of leadership have to matter because this stuff isn't cheap or easy. But that political will, it had to translate into actual safe land for the tigers.
Precisely. You can't just wish a population into existence. The policy had to create secure core breeding grounds, safe zones.
And how do they do that?
The two key moves were establishing the brand new Bank National Park and then strategically expanding the existing Parsa National Park.
Creating more space.
Exactly. Creating contiguous habitat, letting the population grow without immediately running into density issues.
And you can see that policy reflected in the numbers in a really striking way. Parsa National Park specifically. The figures are just astonishing.
They really are. The sources point out that Parsa, which had a baseline of just 4 tigers about a decade ago.
Only 4?
Yeah, an alarmingly low number. That population has surged to 41.
Wow.
That's just direct proof. When you protect a core breeding ground, the tigers will absolutely rebound. The problem wasn't their ability to breed, it was the safety of their home.
So if we connect those dots, solving the two biggest threats everywhere else, poaching and habitat loss.
Exactly. That commitment from the top had to be matched with, really rigorous enforcement on the ground.
Right. So what did that look like? Was it just, a top-down military operation? Or did they need the local citizens to get involved?
It was a very clever mix. A whole-of-nation approach is what they call it. They knew you couldn't just protect these massive areas with uniformed guards.
So on the enforcement side.
They set up the Central Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, which showed they were serious about prosecuting poachers. And yes, they leaned heavily on the army and police. But the real game changer, the thing that I think really defined this success, was getting the people who live near the parks to buy in.
And this is where the community-based anti-poaching units, the CDAPUs, come in.
That's it. These units totally transformed local communities. I mean, these are the very people who might see a tiger as a threat, competition for grazing land, a danger.
And they turned them into protectors.
Fierce, dedicated protectors. It's an incredible shift.
I was really struck by the dedication here. I mean, this wasn't just a job for them. It was a total buy-in. How did these CBAPUs actually function day to day?
They became the eyes and ears of the forest. They provided intelligence, monitored trails, patrolled areas where, security forces couldn't always be.
They know the land better than anyone.
Better than anyone, indispensable. By giving them ownership and training, the government basically built a conservation shield that made poaching socially unacceptable in those areas.
Which brings us to a key principle here, one that goes beyond just enforcement. It's about harmonizing ecology and economy.
That's the core of it. For communities living next to these territories, like around Chitwan and Bardia, the tiger couldn't just be a threat. It had to become an asset, something that brings tangible benefits.
The sources have this great line. Where there are tigers, there are tourists. Where there are tourists, there will be livelihoods.
That's a powerful formula.
It is.
But doesn't that feel a little risky? Linking a species' survival directly to the tourism market.
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
The focus was on controlled, high-value ecotourism. And the key was ensuring that the revenue went directly back into those local communities.
So they see the direct benefit.
Exactly. It's hard to justify protecting an animal that only feels like a risk. But when the local economy is thriving because of the tiger, the community becomes its most vigilant defender. That makes the shift from just conservation to actual coexistence mandatory. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. A population surge from 121 to 355 tigers. You inevitably get more human-tiger conflict, right? Especially in that Terai Arc landscape where people and wildlife share space.
That is the next great hurdle, absolutely. But the sources have some surprisingly positive data on this.
Really?
Yeah. Despite that huge increase in tigers, conflict incidents, including fatalities, have actually been declining in recent years.
Declining? How is that even possible with triple the number of tigers? That seems completely counterintuitive.
It does, but it's largely attributed to these really proactive and sustained conservation education programs.
So they're not just telling people to stay away from tigers.
No, it's much more sophisticated. They're teaching practical mitigation, caution, and crucially, how to interpret tiger behavior to avoid those accidental, tragic confrontations. It's a slow process of, learning to live alongside a huge predator.
Wow.
And this brings us to a new strategic paradigm. The tiger population is sort of reaching the carrying capacity in their protected zones.
Right, they've run out of room, in a way.
In a way, yeah. So the goal has to shift. They've already saved the tiger. Now, the much more complex goal is coexisting with the tiger long term.
And that success, it gives Nepal incredible leverage on the international stage. With 355 tigers, they're not just a recipient of conservation aid anymore.
Not at all. They're a biodiversity powerhouse.
Which brings us to this idea of tiger diplomacy. What does that actually mean?
It's a really exciting and innovative concept. Experts are now talking about using what they call surplus tigers.
Surplus tigers?
Yeah, healthy, genetically viable tigers from the successful program, using them as symbolic gifts to other nations.
So they're leveraging their conservation win into geopolitical capital.
Exactly.
A living, breathing symbol of friendship. But what are the strategic goals? It has to be more than just a goodwill gesture.
Oh, it's highly strategic. There are 3 core goals. First, obviously, is strengthening bilateral relationships. A gift like this creates deep ties.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, it strategically opens doors for the technical expertise and support that Nepal still needs to manage this large population. I mean, maintaining 355 tigers is a huge undertaking.
So it's a way to keep the international support flowing. And the third goal?
The third is about cementing Nepal's global reputation. It elevates them from just a success story to a true global conservation mentor.
The country that others look to for guidance.
Precisely. They're demonstrating that, sustainable development and wildlife conservation can actually go hand in hand.
But saving the tiger within Nepal's borders is only half the battle, isn't it? If you're talking long-term genetic health.
Yeah.
The sources really stress protecting these biological corridors.
That's paramount. It's about landscape management now, not just park management.
What does that mean in this context?
It means maintaining a large, connected ecosystem. To ensure genetic diversity, you have to protect the forested pathways, the corridors that connect tiger habitats across the whole Terai Arc landscape.
And crucially, those corridors don't stop at the border.
Exactly. They stretch across international borders, especially into neighboring India. So this international collaboration, it's going to define the next decade of this diplomacy. It requires joint patrols, coordinated development, everything you need to stop those pathways from being broken up.
So what does this all mean? Nepal's journey from 121 to 355 tigers isn't just a number. It's this compelling, pragmatic model where political will and community empowerment actually worked.
A model of diplomacy where wildlife and sustainable development walk hand in hand.
By prioritizing this, by achieving this victory, they've sort of earned the right to mentor the rest of the world. It's an inspiring story of commitment, of focus, and just harnessing the passion of local communities to do something that seemed impossible.
It really is.
But as we've heard, the long-term sustainability of all this, it hinges on managing that wider landscape, on protecting those biological corridors that cross international borders. The next big challenge isn't counting tigers inside Nepal. It's getting global cooperation to maintain the entire ecosystem.
That's the next frontier.
So, given this stunning conservation victory and Nepal's new role as a global mentor, the provocative question for you to think about is this. How effective will the international community actually be in responding to Nepal's need for that coordinated cross-border landscape management? Because that collaboration is what will ultimately determine the destiny of all 355 tigers.